Emily Carter threw herself across her baby sister's body with both arms spread wide and screamed raw and ragged at the woman with the clipboard. "You are not taking her. She is 3 years old. She doesn't even know where she is." The woman in the gray dress didn't blink. "Step aside, miss. This is a legal court placement." Emily didn't move. Then from the very back of the crowded fairground arena, a tall man in a dust-caked hat pushed through the silence and said low and even, "Nobody's taken anybody, not today." If this story already has your heart, please subscribe to our channel, hit that follow button, and drop the name of your city in the comments below. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now stay with me, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about family. The Hargrove County Summer Placement Fair was what the state of Texas called an opportunity. That was the word they used in the official letters opportunity printed in clean black type on cream-colored county stationery, as though what happened inside the livestock pavilion on those sweltering August afternoons was something children ought to be grateful for. Emily Carter had been to 2 of them before. She knew exactly what they were. She kept one arm around Lily the entire morning. Lily, 3 years old, copper-haired with eyes so wide and dark they seemed to take up half her face, hadn't spoken a single word since they'd arrived. She pressed her cheek against Emily's ribs and kept her fingers locked around Emily's wrist like a small, determined animal that had decided with great certainty that it was not going to let go. Emily had made her a promise that morning. Whispered it while braiding Lily's hair in the cramped bathroom of the group home, both of them sitting on the cold tile floor before the sun came up. "Nobody's splitting us up. You hear me? Nobody. I don't care what they say. I don't care what papers they show me. You and me. That's it. That's the deal." Lily had nodded very seriously, the way 3-year-olds do when they understand the gravity of something, even if they can't name it. Emily was 12 years old. She had been in the system for 4 years. She had learned early the way children in her situation learn most things, which is through being hurt, that promises made by adults were made of smoke. They dissolved the moment something more convenient came along. The only promise that had ever held was the one she made to herself the night their mother didn't come home, and the neighbor called the county line, "I will not lose her." The pavilion smelled like hay and machine oil, and the particular kind of desperation that collects in institutional spaces. Folding chairs lined the walls. Social workers with lanyards and clipboards moved between the families who had come to browse, and the children who stood in clusters and tried not to look like they knew what was happening. But they knew. They always knew. Emily watched a boy of about 7 get led away by a couple in matching polo shirts. He looked back twice. Nobody looked back at him. She pulled Lily tighter. "You're squishing me," Lily said quietly. "Good," Emily said. "Stay squished." The county caseworker assigned to them a thin woman named Mrs. Pruitt, who smelled like menthol cigarettes and wore her reading glasses on a chain around her neck, appeared at Emily's elbow with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Now, Emily, I need you to be cooperative today. We have some very nice families here, good homes, stable situations. Are any of them willing to take both of us?" Emily asked. She had learned not to waste time. Mrs. Pruitt's smile thinned. "That's a more complicated conversation. It's a yes or no question, ma'am." "Emily, because last time you told me there were families willing to take siblings, and then you separated me from my cousin Danny anyway, so I'm asking you directly, yes or no." Mrs. Pruitt looked uncomfortable. "We have several families interested in Lily specifically. She's very young, very placeable. And there are some options for girls your age, but not together." The pause was its own answer. Emily's jaw set. She pulled Lily closer. The Hendersons found them 40 minutes later. They were the kind of couple who announced their wealth through the careful subtlety of people who had always had it: good shoes, good posture, a confidence in the way they moved through the crowd that suggested the world had always arranged itself around them rather than the other way around. The woman, Patricia Henderson, had silver blonde hair pulled back smooth and a smile like a department store catalog. Her husband, Frank, had the handshake of a man who owned things. Patricia crouched down in front of Lily immediately, which was the wrong move, because Lily buried her face against Emily's side so fast she nearly knocked them both sideways. "Oh, she's precious," Patricia said to Emily rather than to Lily. "How old?" "3," Emily said flatly. "And you're her sister." Patricia stood exchanging a look with her husband. Then she turned to Mrs. Pruitt, who had materialized behind them like a paper shadow. "She's exactly what we discussed, but we really only have room for—" "I know," Mrs. Pruitt said very quietly. Something cold moved through Emily's chest. "We could offer the older girl a placement referral," Frank said, still pleasant, still looking at Lily. "There are programs for children her age. Good ones." Emily said, "I'm standing right here." Frank glanced at her slightly surprised, as though a piece of furniture had spoken. "Of course," he said. "She is not going anywhere without me," Emily said. Her voice was completely steady. She had practiced keeping it steady. She had learned that when you were 12 and small, and your whole life fit in a garbage bag, the only currency you had was a voice that didn't shake. "We are a family. You take us both, or you don't take either of us." Patricia Henderson's smile went gentle and pitying. "Sweetheart, sometimes what we want and what's best for everyone aren't the same thing." "Don't call me sweetheart." "Emily." Mrs. Pruitt's voice held a warning. "She's 3 years old." Emily's voice climbed, not because she lost control of it, but because she made a decision. "She does not know these people. She does not know this place. She woke up crying at 4 in the morning because she thought she was alone. She cannot go with strangers without me. She will not understand. She will think I left her. She will think she did something wrong. She is 3. Emily, lower your voice." "I will not lower my voice." She was crying now, and she hated it. Hated the way tears made adults dismiss you. Hated the hot slide of them down her face, but she couldn't stop. She put both arms around Lily and faced the crowd that had gone quiet around them. "Somebody please, she's my sister. She's only 3. Please don't take her from me. Please. She's all I have left. We're all each other has. Please." Lily, who had kept very still through all of it, pressed her small face against Emily's neck and began to cry too, the silent, breathless kind that children cry when they're so frightened they can't make sound. The crowd was very still. The Hendersons took a step back. Mrs. Pruitt reached for Emily's arm. And then a voice from the back of the pavilion said clearly, without heat, without hurry, "That's enough." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The crowd parted the way crowds do when someone moves through them with absolute, unhurried purpose, not pushing, not demanding, just walking as though he had somewhere to be and intended to get there. He was tall, lean in the way that comes from actual labor, rather than a gym with a jaw that looked like it had been cut from something hard and left to weather. His hat was dark and dusty. His boots were older than the building they were standing in. He had the hands of a man who worked with them. He stopped in front of Mrs. Pruitt, and he looked at her with gray eyes that were neither unkind nor particularly warm, just level the kind of eyes that had seen enough to stop being surprised by much. "What exactly is the plan here?" he said. Mrs. Pruitt straightened. "Sir, this is a county placement proceeding. If you're not a registered—" "I'm registered. Name's Caleb Dawson. I've been on your list for 8 months." He pulled a folded paper from his shirt pocket and held it out without looking at it, still watching her face. "Single household working ranch background, cleared home inspection passed. I believe that's everything you asked for." Mrs. Pruitt took the paper, looked at it. Her expression shifted slightly. "Mr. Dawson, we appreciate your interest, but we have families here with 2-parent households, more resources." "I didn't ask what you appreciated," he said. "Not rude, just factual. I asked what the plan is, because from where I'm standing, the plan appears to be separating a 12-year-old from a 3-year-old who is currently terrified, and I'd like to understand the reasoning. The reasoning is the best interest of the child." "Which child?" The question landed in the silence like a stone in still water. "Mr. Dawson." "Which child's best interest?" he said again, and his voice was patient, deliberate, like a man who had asked a question and genuinely intended to wait for the answer. Because it sounds like you've decided the best interest of the younger one is a nice house and 2 parents, and the older one can figure herself out. Am I reading that wrong?" Nobody answered. He looked down at Emily for the first time. His eyes went to Lily. First took in the white-knuckled grip, the silent crying, the way the little girl had made herself as small as possible, and something moved across his face quickly like a shadow. Then he looked at Emily. "You her sister," he said. Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Yes, sir." "She got anybody else?" Emily's throat worked. "No, sir. Just me." He nodded once like that settled something. He turned back to Mrs. Pruitt. "I'll take them both." The caseworker blinked. "Mr. Dawson, that's not both," he said again. "That's my application. Take it or leave it. But if you're going to stand there and tell me the state of Texas is going to split up 2 little girls because nobody wants the inconvenience of taking the older one, then I want to talk to someone above your pay grade, and I will stand here all afternoon to do it." The silence stretched. Patricia Henderson touched her husband's arm. They stepped back further, then further still, and then they were gone, absorbed back into the crowd as quietly as they had come. Mrs. Pruitt looked at the paper in her hand, looked at Caleb, looked at Emily and Lily. She sighed the long-suffering sigh of a bureaucrat who has just realized the path of least resistance runs in an inconvenient direction. "There will be a provisional period," she said. 60 days, home visits, full compliance with county requirements." "I know what provisional means," Caleb said. "And you understand that a working ranch presents certain liability concerns for children of this age." "I'll manage the liability." "Mr. Dawson." "Ma'am?" His voice was quiet and final. "Are we done here, or is there something else you need from me?" Another long pause. "We'll need to complete the transfer paperwork," Mrs. Pruitt said. Caleb reached over to the folding table beside them, picked up a pen, and set it down in front of her. "Then let's get started," he said. Emily stood very still. Lily had gone quiet, still pressed against her, but her crying had slowed. One small hand reached out from Emily's side, cautious as a bird, and touched the edge of Caleb's sleeve. He looked down. Lily was looking up at him with those enormous dark eyes. He didn't say anything. He didn't crouch down or make a fuss or do any of the things adults did when they were performing gentleness for an audience. He just met her gaze steady and unhurried and let her look. After a moment, Lily tucked her hand back against Emily's ribs. But she had stopped shaking. The drive to the Dawson Ranch took 40 minutes on county roads that went from paved to packed dirt to something that felt more like suggestion than road. Emily sat in the back of Caleb's truck, with Lily asleep across her lap. The little girl finally worn down to unconsciousness by the exhaustion of being afraid. Emily watched the land flatten out and go golden in the late afternoon light. She didn't trust it. She had learned not to trust anything that looked peaceful, because peace, in her experience, was just the quiet before something broke. She watched Caleb's hands on the wheel. He hadn't said much since they left, hadn't tried to make conversation or fill the silence with reassurances. Emily appreciated that more than she could have explained. She was tired of reassurances. She had heard so many of them from so many different adults, and not one of them had ever held. "How big is your ranch?" she said finally. His eyes went to the rearview mirror. "Big enough to keep you busy." "Are there other kids there?" "No." "Are there other adults?" A pause. "My neighbor Hector comes around sometimes. Helps with the cattle." "Is it just you?" "It's just me." Emily said, "Why?" He looked at the road. "Why what?" "Why do you live by yourself?" A long silence. The kind that isn't uncomfortable so much as considered. "Lost some people," he said. "A while back." Emily looked at the back of his head. She thought about asking more. She decided against it. She understood the sentence completely. "We're not going to be any trouble," she said. "I want you to know that. I can cook, I can clean, I can work. Whatever you need on the ranch, I'll learn. We won't cost you more than we're worth." The truck slowed. He looked at her in the rearview mirror, and his expression did something she couldn't quite read. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I know that's what adults say." "I mean it." "I know that's what adults say too," Emily said. He didn't argue with her. He just nodded very slightly and looked back at the road. That was the moment Emily decided she didn't entirely hate him. The ranch house wasn't what she expected. She had braced herself for a bunkhouse maybe, or something falling apart at the seams. The kind of place that matched the picture she had assembled of a lonely man with no particular reason to maintain things. But the house was sound if worn, with a porch that wrapped around the front, and windows that let in the long evening light. He had put a quilt on the bed in the spare room. It was folded down at the corner the way hotel beds are turned down, which meant he had done it on purpose, which meant he had thought about them before they arrived. Emily noticed that. She put it away somewhere carefully. Lily woke up when Emily carried her inside, and immediately went rigid, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar walls. She was 2 breaths away from screaming, "Hey!" Emily kept her voice low and even, the way she always did. "Hey, Lilybug, I got you. Look at me. I got you." Lily grabbed her collar with both fists. "Are we staying?" she whispered. "Yes. Together. Together." Lily considered this with the extreme seriousness of a 3-year-old weighing a business proposition. Then she put her head back down on Emily's shoulder. Caleb appeared in the doorway. He had taken off his hat, which made him look different, younger somehow, and less certain. "There's food if they're hungry," he said. "Nothing fancy. Beef stew, biscuits." Emily opened her mouth to say, "We're fine," because she always said they were fine, because it was safer to need nothing. And then Lily said, small and immediate and heartbreakingly honest, "I'm hungry." Caleb almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. "Come on then," he said, and disappeared back toward the kitchen. Emily followed him with Lily on her hip, and she thought, not for the first time in her life, and not for the last, "Don't get used to this. Don't let yourself get used to this." But Lily was already reaching toward the kitchen smell with both hands, and Emily's stomach was hollow, and the house was warm, and for 8 minutes, while they sat at the kitchen table eating beef stew by lamplight, with Caleb sitting across from them, and asking Lily very seriously whether she preferred biscuits with or without butter. Lily's verdict, both Emily forgot to be afraid. 8 minutes. She would think about those 8 minutes for a long time afterward, because that was the evening that Margaret Vance, director of Hargrove County Child Services, opened a file on her desk with the name Dawson Caleb printed on the tab, and began writing notes in her careful, precise handwriting about a single man on an isolated ranch and 2 children who deserved, in her official opinion, better than what the county had just allowed. And because that was also the evening that 2 women in town, neither of them bad people exactly, just the kind of people who fill silence with speculation, stood in the parking lot of the Dairy Queen on Route 9 and said to each other what the whole town would be saying by morning. "Did you hear about Caleb Dawson? Taking in those 2 little girls from the placement fair, by himself, on that old ranch. You have to wonder why." Emily didn't know any of that yet. She was sitting at a kitchen table watching her sister butter a biscuit with extreme concentration, and for the first time in 4 years she was not watching the door. She would learn to watch it again soon enough. But tonight, just tonight, she let herself eat. The next morning came the way mornings do on a working ranch, without ceremony and without mercy. Before the sun had fully cleared the ridge, Caleb was already moving through the house boots on the floor, coffee boiling the particular sounds of a man who had lived alone long enough that his routines had calcified into ritual. Emily was already awake. She had been awake for an hour, sitting on the edge of the bed with Lily curled against the pillow, watching the light change under the door and listening to the house breathe. She did this every time she was somewhere new. She learned the sounds of a place before she trusted it. The creak of the 3rd floorboard. The way the pipes knocked when the water ran. The direction a door opened. The things that could tell you in the dark whether someone was coming. She heard Caleb stop outside their door. A pause, then quietly, "There's eggs if you want them." He didn't knock, didn't open the door, just set it into the wood and moved on. Emily sat with that for a moment. Then she got up, Lily ate 4 scrambled eggs and half a piece of toast, and then looked at the remaining half like she was considering her options. Caleb slid the other half of his own toast onto her plate without a word. Lily accepted this with the gravity of a small queen receiving tribute. "She always eat like that?" he asked Emily. "When there's food," Emily said. The sentence came out flatter than she intended. Caleb looked at his coffee cup. "Right," he said. He didn't push it. He didn't explain himself or fill the space with something sentimental. He just drank his coffee and let the morning exist around them. That was the first thing Emily noted about Caleb Dawson. He did not perform kindness. He just did things. Put food on plates. Left the bathroom light on all night without being asked. Hung their 2 small bags, the garbage bags from the county, which she had been quietly humiliated by, on actual hooks in the hallway, as though they were real luggage belonging to real people who intended to stay. Small things. She watched all of them. She didn't let herself feel them yet. She just watched. It was on the 3rd day that Lily stopped eating. Not dramatically. Not all at once. She just got quieter at mealtimes, pushing food around the plate, her eyes fixed on something nobody else could see. Emily knew the look. She had seen it before in the months after their mother didn't come back, when Lily had been too young to understand absence, but old enough to feel it like a wound in the center of everything. "She does this sometimes," Emily told Caleb that evening, low enough that Lily sitting near the window couldn't hear. "It's not the food. She just goes somewhere else for a while. She'll come back." Caleb was quiet for a moment. Does she have something back where she was? Something she kept with her? Emily thought about it. She had a stuffed rabbit. They lost it in the last transfer. He nodded. Didn't say anything. The next morning there was a small stuffed horse on the kitchen table when Lily came down. Not a rabbit, clearly. He hadn't been able to find a rabbit. But a brown horse with a yarn mane and a serious, pleasant face. It was the kind of thing you found at a drugstore, new tags still on it. Lily stopped in the doorway. She looked at the horse. She looked at Caleb, who was at the stove, with his back to her, deliberately not watching. She walked to the table, picked up the horse, and held it against her chest. She didn't say thank you. She was 3. But for the first time in 4 days, she ate breakfast without being coaxed. Emily watched Caleb not react to this. Watched him keep his back to the table, keep turning eggs in the pan, keep his expression exactly the same, and she felt something shift in her chest. Something she didn't have a name for yet. Something she was immediately suspicious of. She put it away. She was good at putting things away. The trouble with the town started, as trouble often does, before Emily was aware it had begun. She found out the way she found out most things, by listening when adults believed she wasn't. She was in the feed store with Caleb on the 5th day, standing in the aisle with Lily on her hip, while he talked to the man at the counter, when she heard 2 women in the next aisle speaking in the particular register people use when they want to be overheard but still want plausible deniability. "That's them," one of them said. "The girls from the placement fair." Can you imagine a single man out there on that property with 2 little ones? Nobody out there to see what goes on. "I heard he's been alone since the accident. They say he went strange after." "Strange how?" "Just strange. Closed off. You know how he is." "I know he used to be different. Before." A pause. Then, "I'm just saying I'd want someone checking on those children." Emily held Lily tighter. Lily looked up at her face and read it the way children read the people they love, instinctively and accurately. "Emmy," she said quietly. "I got you," Emily said. She looked toward Caleb at the counter. He was paying for a bag of feed. His hat brim low, his expression unreadable. She couldn't tell if he'd heard. She thought he probably had. She thought he was probably used to it. On the drive home, she said, "People in town are talking about you." "I know," he said. "It doesn't bother you." He was quiet long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, "Bothered me more before I stopped being surprised by it." "What do they say normally, before us?" Another pause. "That I'm not right since the accident. That a man who lives out there by himself must have something wrong with him." He glanced at the mirror. They're not entirely incorrect. Emily looked at his profile. What happened in the accident? The truck was very quiet. My wife, he said finally, and my boy. 3 years ago. He said it the way people say things they have said so many times that the words have worn smooth, lost their edges, become bearable through repetition, even though the thing itself has not. Drunk driver came through a crossing on the county road. Clara and James. She was 31, he was 6. The silence that followed was the kind Emily knew better than to fill. After a long moment she said, I'm sorry. So am I, he said. That was all. But something passed between them in the truck on that county road, some recognition, some mutual acknowledgement of the specific weight that comes from losing the person who was supposed to be your family. And Emily didn't put it away. She let it sit. She thought that might be the first honest thing she had allowed herself since they arrived. The first visit from Margaret Vance came on a Tuesday 9 days after they'd arrived. Emily heard the car from the porch where she was sitting with Lily, and she knew before the woman got out of it that this was not a friendly call. There was something in the way the car sat, official, deliberate, angled slightly toward the road, like it hadn't fully committed to being there, that she recognized from 4 years of experience. The woman was in her 50s with the posture of someone who had long ago decided that good posture was a form of argument. Gray suit jacket, sensible shoes, a clipboard that she carried like it had weight beyond its actual weight. She introduced herself to Caleb on the porch. Margaret Vance, County Child Services. I'm the Placement Oversight Director for this district. She looked past him at Emily and Lily with a practiced, professional expression that gave nothing away. This is a routine compliance visit. I'll need to see the living situation, speak with Mr. Dawson privately, and then spend a few minutes with the children. Caleb said, You're welcome to all of it. Emily watched her walk inside. Lily tugged her sleeve. Who is that lady? Someone from the county, Emily said. Lily thought about this. Is she going to take us? No, Emily said. And then because she was 12 and Lily was 3 and 3-year-olds, believe what they're told with a totality that 12-year-olds have long since lost. No, she's not. She believed it when she said it. She wanted to believe it. She stopped believing that when she heard through the kitchen window she was sitting near Margaret Vance say to Caleb in a low-clipped voice, I'll be direct with you, Mr. Dawson. This placement was rushed through under unusual circumstances, and I have significant concerns about its suitability. A single adult male, no co-parent, an isolated rural property, no immediate support network. The younger child has documented trauma response. The older child has a history of behavioral incidents in prior placements. Emily went very still. Caleb's voice was measured. What kind of behavioral incidents? Defiance, conflict with authority figures, refusal to comply with placement protocols. She was protecting her sister, he said, be that as it may. I'm not arguing with your characterization, ma'am. I'm explaining it. That child has been trying to hold her family together for 4 years inside a system that keeps trying to take it apart. What you're calling defiance, most people would call devotion. A silence. I'm not here to debate the child's character, Vance said. I'm here to assess the placement, and I want to be transparent with you. I will be making a recommendation to the court within the next 30 days. I would encourage you not to allow the children to become overly attached in the interim. Emily heard Caleb set something down on the counter. Slowly, deliberately. With respect, Ms. Vance, he said, and his voice had gone very quiet and very even, in the way that Emily was beginning to understand, meant he was choosing each word with precision. I'd encourage you to remember that those children are people, not placements. And the moment you start managing their capacity for attachment to protect your paperwork, you've forgotten which direction your job is supposed to point. Another silence. Longer this time. I'll be in touch, Vance said. I'll be here, Caleb said. Emily was off the porch before the front door opened, pulling Lily with her around the side of the house, her heart slamming against her sternum. She pressed her back against the wall and held Lily close and listened to Vance's car start and pull out of the drive. 30 days. She had said 30 days. Emily had not survived 4 years in the system by misunderstanding timelines. She found Caleb in the kitchen. He was standing at the window watching the dust cloud Vance's car had left on the county road, and he didn't turn around when Emily came in. "I heard," Emily said. "I figured. She's going to try to move us." He turned around. His face was set, but his eyes weren't angry. They were something more complicated than angry. Something that looked more like a man who has just understood the shape of a problem and is already working through it. "She's going to try," he said. "That's not the same as no." "No," he said. "It's not." Emily's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the kitchen table. "So what do we do?" Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, forearms on the table, and he looked at her the way she had never been looked at by an adult. In this context, straight on, without softening, without the vague, reassuring noises people made when they didn't want to deal with the reality a child was handing them. "We do this right," he said. "We follow every rule, every visit, every requirement. We give them nothing to use. And if they use it anyway, then we get a lawyer." Emily blinked. Something shifted on his face. He said simply, and didn't look away. The word sat between them on the kitchen table like something solid. Emily looked down at the wood grain, swallowed. "People are talking in town," she said. "About you. About why you took us in. They're saying things." "I know what they're saying." "It could make things harder. For the court." "Probably." "Then why did you—" She looked up at him. "You didn't know us. You didn't owe us anything. Why did you step in?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because nobody else was going to." "That's not a reason?" "It's the only reason I've ever needed for anything," he said. Emily stared at him. She had met adults who helped because it made them feel good about themselves. Adults who helped because they wanted something in return. Adults who helped the way people perform charity, with an audience with paperwork, with a quiet expectation of gratitude. She had learned to identify all of them. She had learned to protect herself from all of them. She could not find any of those things in Caleb Dawson's face. What she found instead was a man who was tired and still showing up anyway. A man who understood something about loss that she recognized from the inside. A man who had put a stuffed horse on a kitchen table for a little girl he didn't know because she was sad, and he could do something about it, and so he did. She didn't cry. She had cried enough in the last 2 weeks to last her a year. But something in her chest unclenched just slightly. Just enough. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Lily appeared in the doorway with her stuffed horse, looked at both of them with enormous dark eyes, and said with great authority, "His name is Button." Caleb looked at the horse. "Good name." "I know," Lily said, and walked back out. Emily almost smiled. It was the closest she'd come in longer than she could remember. She shut it down fast out of habit, but it had been there, a flicker, a ember, and she noticed it the way you notice something returning that you thought was gone for good. Outside, the sun was dropping toward the ridge. Somewhere on the other side of the property, a horse moved in the paddock. The county road was empty, and the dust had settled, and the ranch was quiet, in the way that felt tentatively cautiously, like a place where something might possibly be all right. 3 miles away, Margaret Vance was sitting at her desk, writing the first of what would become many notes in Caleb Dawson's file. And in the hardware store on Main Street, 2 men who had known Caleb for 20 years were telling a third man who hadn't, that there was something off about the whole situation. Something that didn't add up. Something that a man in that state of grief had no business getting himself into. The third man listened. He nodded. He said he'd heard the same thing. By morning, the whole town had heard it too. The second visit from Margaret Vance came on a Friday, not a Tuesday, this time not announced with the same procedural courtesy as the first. She arrived at 8:30 in the morning with another woman Emily didn't recognize, younger, with a notepad and an expression that suggested she was there to write things down and not to editorialize about what she was writing. Caleb met them on the porch. Emily stood at the kitchen window with Lily on her hip and watched. She had gotten good at reading conversations from a distance, at reading body language. The way you learned to read weather, not because anyone taught you, but because your survival depended on it. She watched Vance's hands. She watched the way Caleb's shoulders held their line. She watched the younger woman with the notepad begin writing almost immediately, before anyone had said more than 20 words. She felt the cold place in her chest open up again, the one she'd been trying to ignore for 2 weeks. She set Lily down. "Go play in the back room for a minute, Bug." "Why?" "Because I asked." Lily looked at her. 3-year-olds have an uncanny instinct for the exact moments when adults are lying to them about what is happening, and Lily Carter had that instinct sharpened to a point by 2 years of upheaval. But she also trusted Emily above everything, so she picked up Button the horse and went. Emily moved to the front hall, close enough to the door that she could hear. Vance's voice came through clearly. "The court has scheduled a preliminary review for the 22nd. That's 11 days, Mr. Dawson. I want to prepare you for the possibility that the judge may request an alternate arrangement for the younger child while the full evaluation proceeds." "An alternate arrangement," Caleb said. "Define that." "A licensed therapeutic foster placement. There's a facility in Decatur that specializes in early childhood trauma response. They have availability." "She's not going to a facility. That's not your determination to make at this stage. She's 3 years old, and she just started sleeping through the night." His voice was controlled and hard as packed earth. "You move her to a facility in a city she's never been to, away from the only person she recognizes, and you will undo every bit of progress she has made. You know that. I think you know that." Vance paused. When she spoke again, her voice had the measured quality of someone who has decided to stop being diplomatic. "Mr. Dawson, I'm going to be straightforward with you because I think it serves everyone better. There are concerns being raised in this community about this placement. Multiple concerns. From people who have known you for years." "I'm aware." "Then you understand why the court is obligated to take those concerns seriously. I understand that people in this town decided something was wrong before they had a single fact to support it. And now you're telling me their gossip is going to determine the future of 2 children who finally have a stable situation." "Yes, ma'am, I understand that perfectly. If you'd like to make that argument to the judge on the 22nd, you're welcome to." "I intend to." A beat of silence. "In the meantime," Vance said, "I would strongly advise against creating any further emotional dependency between yourself and the children. It will only make the transition harder." "If the transition happens," Caleb said. "If," Vance said in a tone that did not entirely believe in the word. Emily heard the porch steps creak. She moved away from the hall fast and was standing at the kitchen counter staring at nothing when Caleb came inside. He saw her face immediately. "How much did you hear?" he said. "Enough." She kept her voice steady. She was good at that. "What's a therapeutic placement facility?" He looked at her for a moment. He didn't insult her with hesitation. "It's a group home, specialized, for kids with behavioral or trauma diagnoses. They want to send Lily to a group home. They're considering it, for the evaluation period." Emily felt the ground tilt slightly. She gripped the counter edge. She can't go to a group home. She's 3. She can't even tell them what she needs. She still gets scared of the dark. She still wakes up in the night, and if I'm not there, she... Her voice broke. She stopped, pressed her lips together, forced it back down. "She can't go without me." "I know." "Then fix it." The words came out sharper than she intended. She saw him absorb them without flinching. "I'm sorry. I know that's not fair. I know you're trying. I just..." She stopped again, pressed her hands flat on the counter. "How long do we have before the 22nd? 11 days. And you're going to court?" "Yes." "Do you have a lawyer?" "I'm working on it." She looked at him directly. "Is it enough?" He held her gaze. He didn't lie to her. "I don't know yet." That was the moment Emily decided she could not wait 11 days. She didn't act on it immediately. She spent the next 3 days watching, thinking, planning the way she had learned to plan quietly, carefully, without letting anyone see what she was doing. She watched the weather. She watched Caleb's movements. She thought about the old road she had seen from the truck, the one that cut east through the county land. She told herself she wasn't going to do it. She kept telling herself that until the Thursday night when she woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of something sliding under the door. She lay still for a moment listening. Then she got up. It was a piece of paper. Official, county seal in the top corner. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. Preliminary placement modification, minor child. Lily Carter, effective pending court review, and she understood the date at the bottom, which was not the 22nd. It was 4 days from now. Her hands went completely cold. They had moved it up. Something had changed, and they had moved it up. And in 4 days they were coming for Lily, and she had 11 days, and now she had 4, and 4 was not enough, and she did not trust the lawyer she had never met, and she did not trust the judge she had never met, and she did not trust the county that had failed them 3 times before because she had trusted it 3 times before, and every single time. She folded the paper, put it in her pocket, went back to the bed and lay down next to Lily, who was curled around Button, with her mouth slightly open, entirely unaware. Emily stared at the ceiling. By midnight on Friday, the storm that had been building in the south all week finally arrived. She heard it coming before it arrived, the way the wind changed direction, the way the ranch dog started pacing. She heard Caleb get up, heard him go out to check on the horses, heard him come back in. She heard him stop in the hall outside their door for just a moment and then move on. She waited 20 minutes. Then she got up. She moved quietly, the way she had learned to move in the years when quiet was the difference between being noticed and getting through the night. She dressed in the dark. She dressed Lily, who woke up confused and immediately frightened. Shh. Emily breathed against her hair. It's okay. We're going on a walk. Now, Lily whispered. It's dark. I know. I'll carry you. Is Caleb coming? Emily's throat closed. No bug, just us. She should have known that was the moment Lily would choose to be impossibly perceptive. The little girl went stiff in her arms. I don't want to go, she whispered. I know. I like it here. I know, Lily. Emmy. Lily grabbed her face with both small hands the way she did when she needed Emily to look at her directly. I like it here. Emily pressed her forehead against her sister's. She was shaking. She didn't know when she had started shaking. I know, she said, and her voice broke on both words. I know, but I need you to trust me. Okay. Do you trust me? Lily was quiet for a moment that lasted 100 years. Okay, she said. Emily pulled her close and went out the window. The storm was worse than she'd calculated. The rain came sideways, cold and hard, and the wind off the ridge had teeth. She moved fast, cutting through the back of the property toward the county land, Lily wrapped around her with her face buried in Emily's neck. Button, the horse, clutched in one tight fist. She found the old barn by memory. She had seen it from a distance, on the second day. A collapsed-looking structure set back from the fence line, clearly unused, clearly forgotten. It was a mile and a half of hard walking in the dark through mud and scrub grass, and by the time she pushed through the gap in the weathered boards, she was soaked through to the skin, and her arms were burning from carrying Lily the last half mile. She set Lily down on a dry patch of dirt away from the worst of the leaks. Lily was shivering and completely silent, her dark eyes enormous, clinging to Button. Emily sat down next to her and pulled her close, and for a moment the only sound was the rain hammering the roof and the thunder moving in from the south, and both of them trying to catch their breath. Then Lily said very quietly, I'm cold. I know. I want to go back. Emily wrapped both arms around her and didn't answer. 20 minutes later, she felt it. The particular heat that started in Lily's neck and spread through her small body. Not the warmth of cold turning to warm, but something sharper. Something wrong. She pressed her lips to Lily's forehead, the way their mother used to do back when their mother was still someone who did things like that. Fever. high enough to feel it clearly through dry lips. Emily's whole body went rigid. Lily. She kept her voice gentle calm, the voice she had used for 4 years to keep her sister from panicking while she panicked invisibly. "Hey, look at me." Lily looked at her. Her eyes were slightly glazed. "My throat hurts," she said. "Okay. Emmy, I feel bad. I know, Bug, I know." Emily pulled her tighter and closed her eyes and pressed her face into Lily's wet hair, and the thing that had been building in her chest for 2 weeks, the fear and the grief and the specific unbearable weight of being 12 years old and responsible for someone else's survival, finally cracked all the way through. She didn't cry out loud. She never cried out loud. She had trained herself out of it years ago because crying out loud meant someone heard you, and sometimes the person who heard you was not someone you wanted to find you. But she shook, her whole body shook, and she pressed her hand over her mouth and she let it come silent and devastating. She had done this wrong. She had run. She had panicked, and she had run, and now Lily was sick in an old barn in the middle of a thunderstorm in the middle of the night, and they had no water and no medicine and no way back, and it was her fault. All of it was her fault. She had ruined the one thing that had started to feel like it might actually hold. She heard the horse before she heard anything else. Not close, still a distance off, moving through the storm in a direction that made no sense unless someone was deliberately searching. She lifted her head, pressed her hand flat on the barn wall, and listened. The horse was getting closer. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She had 1 second of pure animal fear, the instinct that said, "Run, hide, you've been found." And then she heard his voice barely audible under the rain and wind calling their names. "Emily! Lily!" He wasn't shouting. He was projecting steady and controlled, the way you call for something in the dark when you don't want to frighten it. "Emily, I'm not angry. Just tell me where you are." She should have stayed quiet. She had 1,000 reasons to stay quiet. She had built her entire life on not trusting the people who came to find her. But Lily was burning with fever, and she was out of choices, and she was 12 years old, and she was so profoundly bone-deep tired. "Here," she said, barely loud enough. Then again, louder, "We're in here." The barn door opened. He was completely soaked, hat dark with rain, the horse blowing hard behind him, and when he came in, and his eyes landed on them, Emily on the dirt floor, with Lily in her arms, both of them shaking. Something passed across his face that was not anger, and was not relief, and was not any of the things she'd prepared herself for. He crossed the barn in 4 steps and crouched in front of them, and he put one hand against Lily's cheek, and then her forehead, and his jaw tightened. "She's burning up," Emily said. Her voice was wrecked. I know, I'm sorry. I heard about the court date, and I thought if I could just get her somewhere they couldn't find us, just until I don't know what I thought. I wasn't thinking. I just couldn't let them take her. I couldn't do it again." "Emily." His voice was quiet. "I'm sorry. I know I made it worse. I know this is going to make everything worse, and I know you've been trying, and I ruined it. I ruin everything. I always ruin." "Emily." His hand came down on her shoulder, firm, steady. The way you put a hand on someone who is spinning to give them something solid to stop against. "Stop." She stopped. He was looking at her, and she saw it, then saw the thing she had been half watching for and half refusing to believe in for 3 weeks. His eyes were bright. Not with anger. His jaw was working. His hand on her shoulder was gripping harder than it needed to, because he was using it the same way she used the counter edge to hold himself together. "I can't lose you too," he said. His voice fractured on the last word. Just slightly. Just enough. Emily went completely still. She watched Caleb Dawson, the rancher who had said 11 words at a placement fair and changed the course of 3 lives, who had put food on a table and a stuffed horse next to a sleeping child, and told her she didn't owe him anything, who had stood between her and every institutional force that had tried to take what little she had left. She watched him press his hand over his eyes, and she watched his shoulders shake once, and she understood that the grief he had carried for 3 years had just cracked open in an old barn in the middle of a thunderstorm because of them. Because they were his now. They had become his somewhere in these 3 weeks, the same way she was beginning to understand with the helpless certainty of something you cannot unknow once you know it, that he had become theirs. Lily reached up with one small fevered hand and touched his face. He caught her hand with both of his and held it. "Can we go home now?" Lily whispered. He pulled them both into his arms, not carefully, not with the measured restraint of a man who was still deciding what they were to him, but completely the way you hold people you are terrified of losing, and said into Lily's hair, "Yeah, baby, we're going home." Emily held on. She didn't stop herself from it. She was 12 years old, and she was exhausted, and she was done pretending she didn't need this. Her fingers locked into his coat, and she let him hold them in the middle of the rain and the dark and everything that was still coming, because she knew now that whatever was coming, he was not going to let them face it alone. What she didn't know yet was how hard the town was going to try to make him. What she didn't know yet was what a courtroom full of people who had made up their minds could do to a man with nothing but the truth and 2 children on his side. She would find out soon enough. But not tonight. Tonight, they were going home. Lily's fever broke at dawn. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in the clothes she'd worn through the storm, when the little girl's body finally stopped burning and went soft with real sleep, the deep, loose-limbed kind that meant the worst had passed. Emily pressed her hand to Lily's forehead, then her cheek, then her forehead again. Then she sat back and let out a breath she had been holding for 6 hours. Caleb appeared in the doorway with a glass of water and said nothing. He just set it on the nightstand and looked at Lily for a long moment. "Her temperature's down," Emily said. "I know. I checked an hour ago." He looked at Emily. "When did you last sleep?" "I'm fine." That wasn't the question. She didn't answer. He didn't push. He just pulled the chair from the corner of the room and sat down in it, and she understood that he was not going to leave, which meant she was not going to be alone with this, which meant she could possibly close her eyes for a few minutes without the world ending. She didn't intend to sleep. She was out in under 2 minutes. She woke 4 hours later to the sound of voices downstairs. Caleb's and a woman's she didn't recognize. She went still listening, every nerve awake before her body fully was. She heard the word court. She heard the word incident. She heard runaway and modification and procedural risk. She got up. The woman downstairs was younger than she expected. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back a blazer that had seen better days and a briefcase that hadn't. She was sitting across from Caleb at the kitchen table with papers spread between them and the look of someone who had driven a long way to deliver information that was going to be difficult to receive. She looked up when Emily appeared in the doorway. Didn't flinch. Didn't do the thing adults did where they exchanged a look about whether the child should be present. "You're Emily," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Ruth Calloway. I'm Mr. Dawson's attorney." She looked at Caleb. He gave a slight nod. She looked back at Emily. "You should probably hear this too." Emily came and sat down. Ruth Calloway did not soften things. Emily appreciated that immediately and completely. "Vance filed an emergency addendum this morning," she said. "The incident last night, the girls leaving the property without authorization during extreme weather conditions, she's characterizing it as evidence of an unstable home environment. She's arguing that Emily's behavior demonstrates a failure of supervision, and that Lily's resulting illness substantiates her concerns about the placement's suitability." Caleb's jaw tightened. She's calling it a failure of supervision. She's calling it whatever builds her argument. Ruth looked at him steadily. "Here's the reality. The hearing is still on for the 22nd. That's 7 days. Vance will have the addendum entered into the record, which means the judge will be looking at this through a specific lens before we've said a single word." "What do we do?" Emily said. Ruth looked at her. "We tell the truth. Clearly and completely. We establish what you were responding to, why you were frightened, what you thought was happening, and we establish what Mr. Dawson did, that he searched for you in a severe storm and brought you home." She paused. Emily, the judge may want to hear from you directly. Emily went still. In court. Yes. As a witness. As a witness. The room was quiet for a moment. Emily looked at her hands on the table. She thought about the courtroom she had been in once before 2 years ago, when a family that had smiled at her during a placement visit had stood in front of a judge and explained politely and thoroughly why keeping both sisters wasn't practical for their lifestyle. She thought about how the judge had looked at her. Sympathetic, helpless, already decided. Okay, she said. Ruth blinked. You don't need to decide right now. I said okay, Emily said. What do you need me to say? Vance came by that afternoon. She didn't knock. She rang the doorbell twice and then walked in when Caleb opened the door, and she stood in the front hall with her clipboard and looked at him the way someone looks at a situation they believe they have already resolved. I want to be clear, she said, that I take no pleasure in this. Then don't do it, Caleb said. I'm obligated. You're choosing, he said. There's a difference. You're choosing to use a frightened 12-year-old's worst night as ammunition in a hearing that is supposed to be about the best interest of the children. So, if it helps you to tell yourself you take no pleasure in it, you go right ahead. But don't say it to me. Vance's expression held. She was good at holding her expression. Emily could see she had practiced it for years, the professional mask of someone who had learned to absorb difficult conversations without letting them in. But something moved behind her eyes just briefly before she shut it back down. The hearing will proceed on the 22nd, she said. We'll be there, Caleb said, and opened the door. The 6 days between that conversation and the morning of the 22nd were the longest of Emily's life, which was a significant distinction given the competition. Ruth came twice more to prepare her. She asked Emily questions and listened to the answers with her head tilted slightly the way people listen when they're evaluating not just what you're saying, but whether a room full of strangers will believe you saying it. She told Emily to speak plainly, to answer only what was asked, to look at the judge directly. Don't perform, Ruth said. Don't try to make them feel something. Just tell them what happened. The truth is already enough. Let it do the work. Emily nodded. She thought about the truth and whether it was actually enough, and she wasn't sure, but she thought Ruth Calloway believed it was, and that counted for something. The night before the hearing, she found Caleb on the porch. Lily was asleep inside, fully recovered, operating at her usual inexhaustible velocity, currently clutching button and dreaming whatever 3-year-olds dream. The night was clear after the week of storms, the kind of clear that feels like an apology. You scared? Emily asked. Caleb looked at the sky. Yeah, he said. He didn't dress it up. Me too. She sat on the porch step. What if it doesn't work? He was quiet for a moment. Then we find another way. And then another one after that. He looked at her. I'm not stopping. You understand me. Whatever they decide in that room tomorrow, I'm not stopping. She believed him. That was the thing she couldn't have predicted 3 weeks ago, that she would sit on a porch with this particular man on this particular night and believe him without a single reservation. She had spent 4 years building walls specifically designed to prevent this. She thought she had built them well. She had underestimated what consistent, patient, unconditional kindness could do to walls. We should sleep, she said. Probably, he said, and neither of them moved for another 10 minutes. The Hargrove County Courthouse was a brick building on the main square that smelled like old paper, and the particular anxiety of people who had come there hoping the law would do something right. The courtroom was smaller than Emily expected, which made the number of people in it feel larger. She walked in behind Caleb and Ruth and stopped in the doorway. The benches were full. She recognized some of them, the woman from the feed store, which surprised her. The man who ran the hardware store, which surprised her more. A group of ranchers she had seen in passing on the county road. She did not understand why any of them were here. She had believed the town was united against Caleb. She had been tracking the evidence of that for 3 weeks, and she had been certain of it. She was not certain anymore. Caleb said nothing. He put his hand briefly on her shoulder, brief, steady, deliberate, and they walked to the front of the room. Vance was already seated at the opposite table, papers, organized, expression arranged. She looked at Emily once. Emily looked back. The judge was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses, and the particular manner of someone who had seen enough courtrooms to have stopped being impressed by performances of any kind. Judge Patricia Hale. Ruth had told Emily her name. Ruth had also said she was fair, which meant she was not predictable, which meant this could still go any direction. Vance presented her case with the confidence of someone who believed the outcome was already determined. She was thorough, clinical, and devastating in the selective way that thorough and clinical things can be devastating. Every piece of evidence she presented was true technically in the way that a photograph can be true, while still being a lie about what it means. Yes, Emily had left the property with Lily during a severe storm. Yes, Lily had developed a fever. Yes, Caleb Dawson had a history of social isolation and documented grief response. Yes, he had no co-parent, no family support network, no formal childcare training. All of it true, all of it pointing in one direction. Ruth cross-examined carefully, precisely chipping at the edges. She established the timeline of Vance's first visit, and the addendum to the court papers established that Emily's response had been driven by a document she had received that detailed a placement modification she hadn't been informed was coming. So the child, Ruth said, looking at Vance, received an official legal document informing her that her sister might be transferred, a document she was not supposed to receive, and your characterization of her subsequent response is that it demonstrates Mr. Dawson's failure of supervision. Vance's answer was careful and long, and ultimately didn't address the question. Then Ruth said, "Your Honor, I'd like to call Emily Carter." The room shifted. Emily felt every eye in the courtroom. She stood up. Her legs were completely steady, which surprised her. She walked to the front of the room and sat in the chair beside the judge's bench and looked out at the courtroom and thought, "Say the truth. Let it do the work." Vance went first. She asked Emily to describe the night of the storm, where she went, what she did, why she made the decisions she made. Her voice was neutral and professional and designed to elicit specific answers that would serve specific purposes. Emily answered each question directly. She did not elaborate. She did not perform. Vance said, "Emily, in your time at Mr. Dawson's ranch, did you ever feel unsafe?" The room went very quiet. Emily looked at her. "No," she said. "Did Mr. Dawson ever—" "No," Emily said. "Whatever you're about to ask, the answer is no." A beat. Vance shifted her papers. "The night you took your sister and left the property." "I left because I was scared the county was going to take her," Emily said. And she had not meant to say more than the question required, but something had come loose in her, and she let it. "I left because I have been in this system for 4 years, and every time someone told me it was going to be okay, it wasn't. Every time an adult said they were going to protect us, they didn't. I left because I got a paper I wasn't supposed to see that said they were moving up the date, and I panicked, and I made a bad decision. But I made a bad decision because I was scared. I was scared because the system I'm supposed to trust has never once given me a reason to." She stopped. Her voice was even. "That's not Caleb's fault. That's yours." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Judge Hale looked at Emily over her reading glasses for a long moment. Then Ruth said, "Emily, can you tell the court about your time at the Dawson Ranch?" Emily looked at her hands, then at the room. Then she said simply and plainly, "Everything: the stuffed horse on the kitchen table, the food without conditions, the man who sat in a chair in the doorway of their room because Lily had been sick and he wasn't going to leave." She said, "Every adult in my life has made us a promise and broken it. He hasn't broken one yet, not one." She stopped. "That's all I know. I don't know about laws and placements and court procedures. I know what it feels like when an adult means what they say. And he means it." She stepped down. The room was so quiet she could hear the clock on the wall. And then, before anyone could speak, there was a sound from the gallery. A small sound, quick feet on wood floor, and Lily was out of Ruth's paralyzed grip and across the front of the courtroom before anyone could stop her moving in the single-minded way of a 3-year-old who has identified the person she wants and has decided nothing will prevent her from reaching them. She grabbed Caleb's hand with both of hers and looked up at him with those enormous dark eyes. "Can we go home now, Dad?" she said. The word fell into the silence like a stone into deep water and sent ripples through every person in the room. Caleb's face broke open. Not dramatically, just at the edges, the way a man's face breaks open when he has been holding something for 3 years and suddenly, without warning, he doesn't have to hold it alone anymore. He lifted her up and pressed his face against her hair, and he didn't say anything. The judge took off her glasses, and then from the back of the room a chair pushing back. Emily turned. The school teacher from town, Mrs. Adler, who had met Emily exactly once when she came to check on their enrollment, stood up. She didn't say anything. She just stood. A moment later, the man from the hardware store stood. Then one of the ranchers from the county road. Then another. Then the woman from the feed store who had whispered about Caleb in the next aisle stood up, and when she did, her face was carrying something that looked a great deal like shame, and she held it plainly without trying to hide it. One by one, the gallery rose. Not for Caleb exactly, not a performance of support, just people standing because something true had happened in front of them, and they were responding to it the way humans respond sometimes when truth cuts through everything else, with the involuntary, uncomplicated recognition that they had been wrong. Judge Hale put her glasses back on. She looked at Margaret Vance. Vance was looking at Lily still in Caleb's arms, Button the stuffed horse pressed between them. Her expression had shifted into something that was not quite what Emily expected. Not stubbornness, not triumph, but something more complicated. Something that looked almost like a woman who was genuinely trying to do right by children, and was beginning to reckon in real time with the possibility that she had gotten this one profoundly wrong. "Ms. Vance," Judge Hale said, "do you have anything to add?" Vance looked at her papers. Then she looked at the courtroom. Then she looked at Caleb and the girls for a long moment. "No, Your Honor," she said. "I don't." The courtroom exhaled. Judge Hale wrote something on the papers in front of her slowly, deliberately. Then she looked up at Caleb over her glasses with the expression of a woman who has made a decision and intends it to hold. "Mr. Dawson," she said, "we'll talk about the path to formal adoption." Emily heard the words, but they didn't land all at once. They came in pieces, the way very large things sometimes do. Adoption formal, Mr. Dawson. And each piece hit her somewhere different. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on her thighs and sat very still and let herself feel it, all of it, without putting any of it away. Caleb looked at her across the courtroom. Lily was still in his arms. His eyes were bright and his jaw was working, and he looked like a man who had just been handed back something he'd thought was gone from the world forever. Emily looked back at him, and she let him see her face, all of it unguarded. No walls, just the truth of what she was feeling for the first time since she was old enough to understand why walls were necessary. She let it go. She let all of it go. Outside the courthouse, the town square was full of afternoon light, and the people who had stood up in that courtroom were spilling out the doors around them. And for the first time in 4 years, Emily Carter walked out of a building that held the county's authority over her life, and felt the sun on her face like something she was allowed to have. Ruth Calloway shook Caleb's hand on the courthouse steps, and then unexpectedly pulled him into a brief, fierce hug that he received with the slightly stunned expression of a man who had not anticipated being hugged by his attorney. She crouched down to Lily's level, looked at her seriously, and said, "You did a very good thing in there today." Lily considered this. "I just wanted to go home," she said. Ruth laughed a real laugh, not a professional one. "Yeah," she said. "That's exactly what you did." The drive back to the ranch was quiet. Not the tense quiet of before, not the watchful quiet Emily had trained herself to maintain in cars, with adults who might be taking her somewhere uncertain. This was a different kind of quiet. The kind that follows something enormous. The kind that needs a little time before anyone knows what to do with it. Lily fell asleep in the back seat with Button clutched to her chest before they'd cleared the town limits. Emily watched the land go past and said without looking at Caleb, What happens now with the adoption? Ruth files the petition. There's a waiting period. More visits, more paperwork. He paused. It's going to take a few months. But it's going to happen. Yes, he said. No hesitation. Emily kept her eyes on the window. Are you scared? A short silence. Of what? Of doing it wrong. Of us. She turned to look at him. You live by yourself for 3 years. We're loud and we take up space, and Lily broke your coffee mug last Tuesday. Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile, something warmer and more complicated than a smile. She did, he said. And then she looked at me like she was waiting to find out if the world was going to end, and when it didn't, she went back to eating her breakfast. And I thought... He stopped, considered. I thought that's what trust looks like when it's just starting. Somebody waits to see what you do when something breaks. He looked at the road. I don't plan on doing it wrong, but if I do, I plan on fixing it. That's all I can promise. Emily looked back at the window. That's more than anybody's ever promised me before, she said. They got home to find that somebody had been there while they were gone. Emily stepped out of the truck and stopped. The porch had 3 covered dishes sitting on it. She could smell something from 6 feet away, warm and savory. And there was a card tucked under the top dish with handwriting she didn't recognize. Caleb picked it up and read it. He didn't say anything for a moment. Who's it from? Emily asked. Hector, he said. And May from the diner. And... He turned the card over. Dorothy Birch. Emily blinked. The woman from the feed store. Yeah, the one who... Yeah, he said again. He stood there looking at the card, and his expression was the particular expression of someone encountering something they had given up expecting. Emily watched him and understood it completely because she had worn that expression herself for 4 years. The look of someone being offered warmth they decided they were no longer qualified to receive. They're sorry, he said. Not to her exactly. Not to anyone. Just saying it. So are you going to let them be? Emily said. He looked at her. Then he looked at the food. Then he picked up the dishes and carried them inside. It was not a dramatic turning point. It was 3 casseroles on a porch. But Emily thought about it for a long time afterward, because she understood that some of the most important moments in a person's life arrive looking like ordinary objects in ordinary light, and only later do you understand what you were being handed. The weeks that followed moved differently than any weeks Emily could remember. Not easily. Nothing about rebuilding is easy, and the process of becoming a family from the raw material of 3 people who had all learned separately and thoroughly not to need anyone was not a process that moved in straight lines. There were hard nights. There were mornings when Emily woke up rigid with the old fear, convinced that something had changed while she slept, and had to lie still and listen to the house until she believed it hadn't. There were moments when Caleb did something so casually, so without performance, helped her with homework at the kitchen table without being asked. Remembered that she liked her eggs without the yolk. Runny moved her library book from the counter so it didn't get wet. That the casualness of it hit her harder than anything deliberate could have. She was learning. She was learning what it felt like to be considered by someone without owing them something for it. Lily, for her part, adjusted with the baffling resilience of very young children, who have not yet learned to be suspicious of happiness. Within 2 weeks, she was following Caleb around the property with the focused determination of a very small foreman, supervising his work with Button tucked under one arm and a stream of questions that had no natural stopping point. She called him Dad with increasing frequency and decreasing self-consciousness, and each time it landed on him differently. Emily could see it the slight catch the swallow the moment of recalibration. One evening, she came down for water and heard him in Lily's room, voice low, talking her down from a bad dream. She stood in the hall and listened. "It's okay," he was saying. "I'm right here." "I dreamed they took Emmy," Lily said, muffled and half asleep. "They didn't. She's right down the hall." "Promise?" "Promise." A pause. Then Lily said with the peculiar gravity of a child negotiating terms, "You have to check. I just checked 5 minutes ago. Check again. She heard him get up, heard his boots on the hallway floor, and pressed herself against the wall as he passed her doorway, but he stopped. He had seen her. He looked at her standing there in the dark hallway in her socks with her arms crossed, and his expression went from startled to something else, something with complicated edges. "She okay?" Emily whispered. "Bad dream." "She gets them sometimes." "I know." He looked at her for a moment. "She needs to see you." Emily went in. Lily grabbed her arm the moment she reached the bed and held on with both hands, while she settled back toward sleep, and Emily sat on the edge of the mattress and watched the little girl's face relax, and thought about how small and enormous this moment was, simultaneously, how much it contained, how 4 years of terror and loss and fighting had led here to this specific room, to this specific hand gripping her wrist, and how that was against all reasonable odds enough. Caleb leaned in the doorway and watched both of them. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The adoption petition was filed on a Thursday morning at the end of October. Ruth called to tell them, and Caleb put the phone on speaker so they could all hear, and Lily's response was to ask whether that meant they were getting a dog, which caused Ruth to laugh for the second time in their acquaintance, and Caleb to say, "Let's take one thing at a time," which caused Lily to immediately begin petitioning for a dog as the next thing. Emily waited until later, until Lily was asleep and Caleb was on the porch, and the house was quiet, and then she sat at the kitchen table with the copy of the filed petition that Ruth had sent through the mail. And she read her own name in legal type on official paper, and she felt something happen in her chest that she didn't have a word for. Emily Rose Carter, minor child. Petitioned for adoption by Caleb James Dawson. She had been named in documents before. Placement orders, transfer papers, modification filings. Her name on county documents had always meant she was being moved, that the life she had tried to build somewhere was being dismantled, and she was being sent to start again from nothing. This was her name on a document that meant the opposite. She sat with it for a long time. She was still sitting there when she heard boots on the porch steps, and Caleb came back inside, and he saw her at the table with the paper, and he stopped. "You okay?" he said. She looked up. Her eyes were dry. She had not cried. She had simply sat here with the weight of it, feeling it fully for the first time, letting it be real. "Yeah," she said. "I'm okay." He came and sat across from her the way he had sat across from her at this same table the night Vance had first come. And he looked at her with the same directness he'd always had, no softening, no performance, just clear-eyed steadiness. "I want you to know something," he said. "Okay. I'm not doing this because I need something from you. I'm not doing this to replace what I lost. Clara and James." He said their names the same way he always said them, carefully, without flinching. "They're not something that gets replaced. That's not how it works." He looked at the table for a moment. "But I've been thinking for 3 years that there was nothing left to build, that what got taken was all there was going to be." He looked at her. "You and Lily walked into a livestock pavilion and scared the living daylights out of me, and I found out I was wrong. That's all. That's the whole thing." Emily looked at him. "You didn't look scared." "I was terrified," he said. "I'm still terrified. Every morning I wake up and there are 2 people in this house who need me to not get it wrong, and I have no idea what I'm doing half the time." "You're doing it right," Emily said. "How do you know?" "Because we're still here," she said. "We haven't run again." He looked at her. Then he put his hand across the table, not reaching for her, just resting it there, open, available, no pressure in either direction. She looked at it. She thought about walls, and what they cost, and what they protected, and whether the math still added up the same way it had when she built them. She put her hand on top of his. They sat there for a minute in the kitchen light, and nobody said anything, and it was enough. The twist nobody saw coming arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in November, in the form of a knock on the front door, and when Caleb opened it, Margaret Vance was standing on the porch without her clipboard. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs and went completely still. Vance looked up at her, then at Caleb. She was not in her gray suit jacket. She was wearing a coat, and she had her hands in her pockets, and she looked for the first time since Emily had known her like a person rather than a position. "I'm not here officially," she said. "I want to be clear about that." Caleb stepped back. "Come in." She came in. She stood in the front hallway and looked around the house, the coats on hooks, the boots by the door. The sound of Lily in the back room, engaged in what sounded like an extremely serious conversation with Button, and her expression moved through something private and complicated. "I owe you an apology," she said to Caleb. Then she looked at the stairs. "I owe her one too." Emily came down slowly. Vance looked at her directly. "I was not wrong to be concerned about the placement," she said. "I want to be honest with you about that. A single adult, an isolated property, 2 children with trauma histories, those are legitimate concerns. What I was wrong about was the way I pursued those concerns. I let what other people were saying shape how I looked at this situation before I had evidence. And I let my worry about liability become more important than what was actually happening in this house." She paused. What was actually happening in this house was that 2 children were being cared for. Emily looked at her for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you testified in that courtroom and you told the truth about what the system had done to your trust, and you were right. And I think you deserve to hear from me directly, that I understand what I contributed to that." The hallway was very quiet. Then Lily appeared from the back room with Button and looked at Vance with the frank, unencumbered assessment of a 3-year-old. "You're the clipboard lady," she said. Vance blinked. "I suppose I am." "You don't have your clipboard." "No." Lily considered this information. Then she appeared to file it and moved on, which was exactly what 3-year-olds do, and which Emily thought was possibly the wisest response available. "Thank you for coming," Caleb said to Vance. "I wanted to," she said, and then she was gone. Emily stood in the hall for a moment after the door closed. She thought about the word system and what it meant, not an abstraction, but a collection of people, individual people, capable of getting things wrong and then standing on a porch without their clipboard to say so. It didn't fix the 4 years. Nothing was going to fix the 4 years, but it meant something, and she let it mean something, and she did not put it away. The adoption was finalized on the 15th of December, 47 days before Christmas, in the same courthouse where Lily had walked across the courtroom floor and said, "Can we go home now?" Dad and where the town of Hargrove had stood up 1 row at a time, like dominoes falling in the right direction. Judge Hale signed the papers with a pen that scratched audibly in the quiet room, and when she looked up, she was smiling, not the professional expression of someone executing a legal function, but the actual smile of someone who has been doing difficult work for a long time, and occasionally gets to witness something uncomplicated and good. "Congratulations," she said, "to all 3 of you." Lily immediately asked about the dog. On the drive home, with the papers in Ruth's briefcase and the day going pale gold around them, Emily sat in the back seat with Lily, who had fallen asleep again, with her head on Emily's shoulder, and she looked out at the land she had learned to read over the past 4 months, the particular shade of the sky, before a weather front moved in the way the fence posts marked the Dawson property from the county road, the ridge that caught the last light at the end of every day. And she understood with the deep settling certainty of something that has finally found its place, that this was hers, not borrowed, not provisional, not dependent on anyone's paperwork or anyone's decision. Hers with all the weight and permanence the word was capable of carrying. That evening, Caleb hung a photograph above the fireplace. He did it quietly, the way he did most things without announcement. Emily noticed when she came in from the kitchen and stopped. It was a photograph from October, the 3 of them on the porch, Lily on Caleb's shoulders, with both hands twisted in his hat brim, Emily beside him laughing at something the old ranch dog asleep on the step below. She didn't know who had taken it. She didn't know when Caleb had had it printed and framed. She only knew that it was hanging above the fireplace in the spot where she had sometimes noticed a rectangle of slightly different paint, slightly less faded, where something else had hung for a long time before. She stood in front of it and looked at her own face laughing. She could not remember the last time she had been photographed laughing. She was not sure it had ever happened. "You okay?" Caleb said from behind her. "Yeah," she said. Her voice was even. "More than okay." Later that night, she was reading in the chair by the window when she heard small feet on the floor, and Lily appeared. Button under one arm, eyes only half open. "Can't sleep," Emily said. Lily climbed onto her lap without asking, the way she always had, the way that had always been the arrangement between them. Lily needed a person. Emily was the person, and no explanation was required. She settled with her head under Emily's chin and was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Emmy." "Yeah. Are we going to stay together forever?" The question landed the same way it always did, simple on the surface, and fathomless underneath the question of two children who had learned to love each other inside a system designed to separate them, who had built everything they had out of the one material that had remained constant through every move, every form, every closed door. Emily pressed her cheek against Lily's hair. "Yeah," she said, "we are. Even when I'm old, even when you're old, even when I'm 30. God help us both, but yes." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, with the conclusive satisfaction of someone whose paperwork has finally been approved, "Okay." She was asleep in 4 minutes. Emily held her in the chair by the window of a house that had their name on a document, now in a town that had stood up for them when it mattered, under a roof that belonged to a man who had stepped forward in a livestock pavilion because nobody else was going to. And she let herself feel fully and without apology the particular quality of a life that has been through the worst and come out the other side into something real. Caleb appeared in the doorway and looked at them. He didn't say anything. He just looked the way a man looks at the things he was afraid he'd never have again, and which have come back to him not as replacement, but as something entirely new. Emily looked back at him. "She asked if we're staying together forever," she said. "What did you tell her?" "I told her yes." He nodded slowly. "Good answer." "What would you have said?" she asked. He looked at both of them, at Lily asleep with Button, at Emily holding her in the chair by the window of the house he had nearly stopped believing in, and he said, with the simple, absolute certainty of a man who has found the thing he intends to protect for the rest of his life, "I'd have said the same thing. Some families are made in a moment, a courthouse signature, a judge's pen, a legal document with 3 names arranged in the order of a life that has finally decided what shape it intends to take. Some families are made over months of quiet mornings and difficult nights over beef stew eaten by lamplight, and stuffed horses left on kitchen tables over storms ridden through on horseback, and hands gripped across courtroom floors, and men who cry in old barns because they cannot bear to lose again. And some families, the ones that hold the longest, the ones that know the cost of what they have, because they have paid it, are made from the decision chosen and re-chosen every single day to refuse to let go. Caleb Dawson and Emily and Lily Carter made that decision, and they never, not once, looked back.
I don't know why I did. Oh, I did knit stitches on the other side on accident. That's what happened. I don't know why I did that, but we did. And that's okay. We'll fix this right up. Right meow. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. You got this. At least I can fix these kind of things. This type of shit is easy for me to fix. Okay, so that's good. This one's not good. This one I had made into. All right, so I need to switch them this way. And then I think those are the last ones there. Okay. Hello, Perry. Welcome in. Good evening to you. Quick question. Was it like RPA, BPA automation? What type of automation? I'm not sure what that means. It was automation for mobile software apps. It's literally your money. Oh, right. Oh, right. I did read those. Let me go to Discord to check it out. We are going to look at Cranston's balls. Yes. Yes, you did hear me right. Let me go. Where is the Discord share? Where did I put it? I had it here a second ago. Did I get rid of it?